My name's Tim and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for having me here. If anything I say is helpful, I'm pleased. And if it's not, oh well. Not everyone in AA can reach me. Certainly when I went to my first meetings, I identified with 1 in 10 people. So I didn't expect to be able to reach anyone, but I'm just going to present my experience. I don't speak on behalf of AA, I just speak on behalf of me. So my date of sobriety is the 24th of July 1993. I was 21 when I got sober, coming up to 48 now. What else is true? My home group is the Bricklane Big Book study on a Saturday. When I'm nuts, I go there and I feel better afterwards. I know a lot of people there, and that's what makes a home group a home group. It's not somewhere I just tip up once a week and skulk in the corner. I mean, there are places I can do that in AA, and that's allowed too. But for me, my home group is somewhere where I build relationships that then carry me through the rest of my week, carry me through the rest of my life. What do I do to stay sober? Well, before we get to that, how do I know I'm an alcoholic? I'm going to talk chiefly about step 10, but I want to give it some context. My drinking was undramatic. I don't have lots of amazing stories to dazzle you with. What I can say is that when I got up in the morning every day, I felt ill because of the night before. I was waiting till I could drink again. I drank gallons, got to bed too late, woke up the next day unable to do anything until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd have a good half hour, I'd get some stuff done, and to reward myself for the immense strain that just doing half an hour's activity in the real world would impose on me, I would get drunk again. And this went round in circles for years. And I was surviving on a bit of reputation I'd acquired before I ever drank, but there was nothing on the inside. There was literally nothing of substance going on in my life. I was supposed to be studying, I wasn't studying. I was supposed to be working at certain points, I didn't work. I couldn't maintain relationships with my family. I had allies, I didn't have friends. I had allies who were useful to me. They were delivery systems for love or respect or money or validation. But I didn't have true relationships with other people. I felt like I was in a hostile world which offered me nothing, which I had nothing but contempt for, and I drank to escape from it. And there were moments when the world lit up, but generally it was very dark. And that was my drinking up to the age of 18, 19. It was a couple of years between then and when I finally did stop drinking, and it's that proves I'm an alcoholic. I knew full well at the age of 18 that for me to drink is a disaster, that it had a grip on me and would occasionally, once every few months, let go temporarily. But my friend Tom describes it like this. He says, alcoholism is like dancing with a gorilla. You're not done dancing until the gorilla is done dancing. And occasionally it's going to let go, and you need to get out of the cage, because when the tune starts playing again, you're going to start dancing again. I did not know how to get out of the cage. There was no one around me to show me how I could live instead, because trying to live like non-alcoholics didn't work. An ordinary life of just going to work and trying to build a home and being nice to people and discharging my civic duties. This was not going to be enough for me. Alcohol had given me access to some kind of other realm beyond the material. It might have been illusory, it might have been temporary, it might have come at a terrible price, but it offered me something that ordinary material existence didn't. And I couldn't just come back into a material existence and be comfortable in it. And I love chapter 11 of the Big Book because it talks about AA offering a sufficient substitute. Let me just find the passage because it's so good. It says, for most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship and colourful imagination. It means release from care, boredom and worry. And then exactly a page and a half later, Yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous, and there it's the same phrase. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. And until I found AA, and within AA, until I found people that could show me how to access that release from care, boredom, and worry, I was just going to keep relapsing, and I did. So my alcoholism is very simple. When I drink at all, I drink buckets for months. But when I stop, I always start again, because I cannot stand living in the world the way I would perceive it. And my life was unmanageable because I wasn't in charge of the course of my life. My alcoholism was in charge of the course of my life. The thing in me which desperately needed treatment, which was not getting treatment, would find it in alcohol. If I didn't find a treatment in AA, it was going to treat itself, and it was going to treat itself with a bottle. So it wasn't from being a goody two-shoes that I started to do what AA was offering freely to me. I did it because the slips were becoming increasingly dangerous and increasingly difficult to come back from. And I simply wanted the dignity of not waking up drunk in a police cell again. If AA could just offer me never waking up drunk in a police cell, that's enough. Just tell me what to do. And I don't know how, but I found the right people. I think when I was ready, I was guided by forces which are greater than me to people that could help me, and they did. And I don't know how many people in here have done the steps. Maybe you've all done all the steps many times. Maybe there are some people who are new. I have no idea. But to me, the steps, there's nothing mysterious or abstract about them. They're really very simple. I found life intolerable because it was all about me, is the basic lesson I got out of the steps. If the universe was this big, I took up about that much, so about 99.5% of the universe. I was pushing against the edges. Wherever I went, I was there. Whatever I looked at, I saw myself in it. Even when I was looking at something outside myself, something in politics, something in the world, I didn't see the thing, I saw my opinion about it. I could never see anything. Everything was all about me. And regardless of whether that's a moral thing or an immoral thing, it was certainly a very painful thing. And I needed freedom from that. And I got freedom from that not by understanding it in steps 4 and 5, by disclosing it to someone else and seeing it for what it was. There's something about saying all of the rubbish in my head to someone else, not with a view to acquiring an accomplice or an ally or someone to co-sign it, but for the purposes of getting rid of it. I see through it, and it's like a house of cards. In my step 5, the house of cards of my perception of my life collapsed. Now, of course, my ego then starts to build it up again in exactly the same way. But there was a period of freedom after my first step 5. And eventually I followed that up with steps 8 and 9. And there were a couple of big rounds of amends. The first one was when I was about 1 year sober, and I made every amend that I could at the time. But my step 8 had not been as thorough as it could be. I hadn't scoured the past. I'd got the lots of the big luggage out of the way, but there's some of the hand baggage which I had to come back for later. And to cut a long story short, when I was about 15 years sober, I did another steps 8 and 9 exercise and approached another 72 people who'd somehow got missed off the first list or had been added onto the list through the havoc I sometimes created stone cold sober. And it talks in the big book. It's only a couple of pages on step 10 in the big book, but they're incredibly dense. where is it? Here we go, page 84. We have entered the world of the spirit. And to me, this is the point of the steps, is to give me a space I can occupy in the universe which is beyond the nuts and bolts of my material life. And that's what it's given me. It's almost impossible to describe it unless you've experienced it yourself. But for me, it's the ability to go through life and engage in stuff, engage with my family, who are currently going through lots of dramas, to engage in work, to engage in all sorts of other things without becoming entangled and enmeshed and glued to everything, to be able to walk through stuff without touching the sides, to feel safe and comfortable whatever happens. Because that's how I felt when I'd had 2 drinks. And that's what AA offers me, but it offers it to me for real and without any price. I can have that I've had 2 drinks feeling. When I can access it whenever I want, but I access it when I'm freed of self. And where step 10 fits in for me in steps 10, 11 and 12 is 10, 11 and 12 are the daily program. Once the first 9 steps have released me from the past. And so I mentioned the confession side of step 5, and the amends which allowed me to come to peace with all the people in my life, all the people in my past. Even if they continued to hate me, and some people did, I had done everything I could. I continued to express goodwill, and many of those people did soften and relent over time. There were people that royally hated me, who I'm now very close friends with. But it wasn't instantly after step 9, it took a while. There was a lot of forgiveness. In the same way that I was being forgiven by other people, I needed to forgive everyone for everything in my step 4. I couldn't carry on holding on to that stuff, and the forgiveness meant withdrawing my judgment against all the people on my step 4, to say that if, to the extent that they behave badly, they, like me, are driven by self. And when I'm full of fear and I act in a childish and controlling and retaliatory way, and when I'm manipulative, I'm not thinking it through rationally. I'm simply driven by forces within me that think if I don't act like that, I'm in trouble. I need to protect myself. It's all other people are doing. I need to extend them the same recognition of powerlessness that I do with myself. So 10, 11 and 12, the bad news is that the price of being free of self is I have to serve something other than self, and in my case that's my higher power. That sounds a little spooky if you don't happen to believe in God. Friends of mine conceive of that as simply acting well, acting in accordance with their conscience, being the most constructive person they can in every situation. I conceive of it as having a higher power. That's the price, and step 10 has got a particular role in that. So in the morning I say to my higher power in step 11, basically, what do you want me to do today? Where do you want me to go? Who do you want me to talk to? What obligations do I have to fulfill? What can I go and do to look after myself? What can I go and do for fun? At night I debrief just a couple of things. What can I do differently? And there's a little review on page 86 I find very helpful with some questions. But in between, the analogy a friend of mine gave me about step 10 is that you've got really 3 elements, and it's like when you're driving a car. I get my car MOT'd once a year, and so once a year I might do a thorough review across all areas of my life, systematically looking at what do I need to do differently with my 90-year-old mother? What do I need to do differently with my other half? What do I need to do differently in job number 1 and in job number 2? I've got 2 jobs. What do I need to do differently with my relationship with money, with food, with sex, with all these things? So I do that once a year or so, or when things blow up. Occasionally the car needs other attention, and every day you when you switch on the ignition, the lights light up and you see if anything needs attending to, and sometimes it does. And that's really my review every day of what are the major things which have gone wrong in the last 24 hours that need to be corrected. Just a couple will do. But most of it, the step 10 in the 12 and 12 is different than the step 10 in the big book. So if you're finding that there's a conflict between the 2, it's because they're different. They describe them in a very different way. But the step 10 in the big book is the one that I use. And basically what it talks about is to try to remain conscious throughout the day. So whatever plan I think my higher power has for me in terms of me acting constructively and well during the day, my job is to keep my mind where that plan is, to keep my mind where that action is. And so this is, with the car analogy, this is the adjustment to the steering wheel throughout the day. And the instructions are incredibly simple. Might as well read out the line. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. And what I've had to learn to do is to become conscious of my own mind in real time. There have been times in the past where something happens and I realise 3 weeks later I've been obsessively, angrily thinking about something, and it's taking me... Everyone else knew that I was obsessing about it, but it takes me 3 weeks to realise that I have a problem. My job in step 10 is to start to spot it as soon as possible. If I can spot it and turn away from it straight away before it has a chance to dig trenches, it's much, as a friend of mine says, it's much easier to root out the enemy when it's running across the plain than when there are lines and lines of trenches and reinforcements. The more I repeat a negative narrative about the situation, the deeper I'm pushing it into my consciousness, and the more the negative narrative becomes the reality. And eventually I'm not upset about what happened. I'm now upset about the story I've told myself 100 times about the thing that happened, and each time I tell the story it becomes a little more distorted and a little more distorted and a little more distorted until I'm Snow White, they're the seven dwarves, everything is everyone else's fault, there is nothing wrong with me, and I'm just going to be angry at you until you change. Once I've got myself into one of those, it takes spiritual surgery to excise it from me. If I can catch it in the moment, there is a chance that it won't burrow all the way down. And it's exactly the same with fear. And so those two particular mental pests, fear I think of simply as a resentment, but projected into the future. A resentment is simply me objecting to something in the past or the present. Fear is objecting to something in the future. And the thing that step 4 taught me many things, but the thing that it taught me about resentment is that, first of all, it's fatal. If I stay miserable for long enough, I will drink again. Secondly, it's pointless. My life has never changed for the better because I've been resentful at a situation. Being angry might prompt me to take appropriate action, but me fulminating against it at 3 o'clock in the morning achieves nothing. And lastly, it's really demeaning to feel that my emotions, my thought life, are being controlled by someone else's bad behaviour. And I'm literally putting the controls of my emotional life into the hands of the people I respect the least. And I can use my pride against myself. I do not want my emotional life to be in anyone else's hands. And as soon as I say, I am responsible for my emotions, you're not responsible, it's my interpretation of your behaviour which is causing me the pain, I can be free. And it's very similar with fear as well. I won't go into a whole spiel about fear, there isn't time, but the principle has been established earlier in the steps for me, that there is no good purpose to resentment, there is no justification for it, there is no good purpose to fear, there is no justification for it. So in step 10, my initial instinctive response when I'm upset by anything and when I'm frightened is, I need to think about this, I need to process this, I need to talk about this. Whereas actually I need to drop it. That's what I need to do. I've already established the principle. This resentment is going to be no different in substance to the rest. This fear is going to be no different in substance to the rest. Let's not reinvent the system. Let's just push it to one side. And the best way to get rid of something out of my mentality, and I'll finish on this because I think it's the most important thing in step 10. I didn't get sober by saying, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to... got sober by saying, I'm going to go to this meeting, I'm going to sit with people at coffee afterwards, I'm going to read the big book on the way home, I'm going to pray to my higher power, I'm going to go to sleep, I'm going to repeat the serenity prayer over and over again if I can't sleep, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to try and be of service to the people at work. And suddenly I was a year sober, without any direct effort. And it's the same in step 10. The way I get rid of the crap in my head, the way I stop acting out with sex or food or money or any of the other things I've had problems with over the years, and boy have I had problems with those things over the years, is not by doing direct battle with them, but by saying, right, for the next 10 minutes I'm going to keep the focus. What is God's will for me now? What is God's will for me now? And persistently and gently bringing myself back to that. The other things gradually fade away and dissolve, and you wonder what all the fuss was all about. Thanks for listening. I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to say on step 10. Thanks.